The year was 2347, and humanity had spent nearly a century as the galaxy's afterthought. When humans first reached the stars, they found the Galactic Assembly waiting for them. 200 alien civilizations, ancient and powerful, looked at humanity the way a grown man looks at a child playing with sticks. They let Earth join their grand coalition, but everyone knew the truth. Humans were tolerated, not respected. Captain Park Do-yoon stood in his small apartment on Earth's orbital station, staring at the message on his screen. He was 42 years old, and his career was supposed to be over. 3 years ago, he had disobeyed a direct order during a border skirmish. His commanding officer had told him to retreat. Park had refused. There were civilian transports behind his position, and he would not leave them to die. He saved 4,000 lives that day, and the Assembly Court stripped him of his rank for disrupting coordinated fleet operations. Now, Admiral Beak Sunho was asking to meet him. Park had never spoken to the Admiral personally. Beak was the commander of Earth's entire defense fleet, a man who spent his days dealing with Assembly politics and the endless humiliation of being humanity's military leader in a galaxy that considered human soldiers a joke. Park took a shuttle to the moon. The coordinates led him to an old mining facility abandoned decades ago. Inside, Admiral Beak waited with 2 guards and a woman Park did not recognize. She was younger, maybe 34, with tired eyes and oil stains on her uniform. Her name tag read Lieutenant Yoon Hannah, Engineering Corps. Admiral Beak wasted no time. The Valoran Empire had been conquering worlds on the galaxy's edge. Small civilizations, minor species, planets with no one to protect them. The Galactic Assembly issued statements of concern and did nothing. 3 weeks ago, the Valorans announced their next targets. For systems, 3 of them belonged to humanity. 50,000 colonists on Korath alone, Beak said. I requested Assembly intervention. They told me to file a formal complaint and wait for the next council session. That session is scheduled for 2 months from now. The Valoran fleet arrives in 19 days. Park understood. The Assembly would let those colonists die. Humans were not important enough to save. What do you want from me? Park asked. Beak led them deeper into the facility. They passed through security doors that looked older than Park himself. The corridors grew wider. The lights grew brighter. And then Park saw it. The ship filled a cavern carved from lunar rock. It was massive, nearly 1 kilometer long, built from dark metal and sharp angles. No curves, no elegance. This was not a vessel designed to impress diplomats. Every line of its construction spoke of one purpose. War, the SS Dr. Beak said. Built in 2271, the year after we discovered the galaxy was inhabited. Park stared at the ship. He had studied history. He knew about the Panic Era, those terrible years when humanity realized they were not alone. When every nation on Earth had poured its resources into preparing for what they assumed would be an invasion, they had built weapons of terrible power. Weapons that the Galactic Assembly later declared barbaric, uncivilized. Illegal? This was supposed to be destroyed, Park said. It was supposed to be many things. Beak placed his hand on the cold metal of the ship's hull. My grandmother was its captain. When the Assembly ordered its destruction, she hid it here. She believed that someday humanity would need a weapon built by humans, for human purposes. Lieutenant Yoon stepped forward. I've spent 6 months studying its systems. The Dokdo carries 24 magnetic railgun batteries. Each one fires tungsten projectiles at 3% of light speed. It has 48 nuclear torpedo tubes. Its armor is layered at blade of plating, 12 meters thick in places. And its targeting systems are analog-assisted, completely immune to the electronic warfare that modern fleets use. Park tried to process what she was telling him. Modern warships used energy weapons. Plasma, lasers, particle beams. Their shields were designed to absorb and disperse energy. Nobody used kinetic weapons anymore. Nobody used physical projectiles. The Assembly considered them primitive, brutal, the weapons of savages. The Valorans have never fought a ship like this, Yoon continued. Their shields won't stop tungsten moving at relativistic speeds. Their sensors won't recognize our weapon signatures. Their electronic warfare will find nothing to hack. She paused. We will be fighting a war they don't understand. Beak turned to Park. I cannot give you a fleet. Earth's official military must remain integrated with the Assembly, or we lose our membership entirely. But I can give you this ship and 200 volunteers. People like you. People who were removed from service because they thought like humans instead of following Assembly doctrine. Do you want me to take a museum piece against the Valoran Third Armada? Park said. 340 ships. I want you to buy time for the colonists to evacuate. I want you to show the galaxy that humanity is not helpless. Beak's eyes were hard. And I want you to make them afraid of us again. Park walked along the ship's hull. He touched the metal and felt how cold it was, how solid. His ancestors had built this thing during the worst years of human history. When fear drove every decision, when survival was the only goal, they had poured their terror into steel and fire. The galaxy had spent a century teaching humanity to be gentle, to be cooperative, to put away their weapons and trust in the Assembly's protection. And the Assembly had failed them, would always fail them, because humanity was small and the strong did not care about the weak. Park thought about the colonists on Korath. 50,000 people, families, children, waiting for an enemy fleet that would show no mercy. I'll need engineers who understand old systems, he said. Soldiers who can think without waiting for orders. Officers who are willing to die, Beak nodded. You'll have them? The washouts, the failures, the ones who never fit into the Assembly's way of doing things. They're already waiting. Park took one last look at the ducto. Somewhere in its cold heart, ancient reactors waited to wake. Weapons that had never been fired waited for their first targets. A philosophy of warfare that the galaxy had forgotten waited to teach a new lesson. Then let's begin, Park said. And the wolf opened its eyes. The ducto came alive slowly, like an old giant waking from a long sleep. Its reactors had been cold for 80 years, and Lieutenant Yunhana treated them like fragile patients. She spent 3 days bringing power back to the ship, checking every system, every connection. When the main lights finally turned on throughout all decks, the crew of 200 stood in silence. They were standing inside a piece of history. Captain Park Do-yoon assembled his officers in the command center. The room was different from modern ships. No holographic displays, no smooth curved surfaces. Everything was metal and hard edges. Screens showed information in simple text and basic graphics. Physical buttons lined every console. Commander O Taiwan was his weapons officer. He was 38, a man who had spent 10 years serving in the Assembly's integrated fleet before requesting a transfer back to human-only vessels. The Assembly had denied his request and then removed him from active duty for failure to adapt to cooperative command structures. Crime was that he asked too many questions. During battle simulations, instead of simply following the networked combat AI, Dr. Shin Youngji was the ship's physician and xenobiologist. At 45, she had studied more alien species than most humans would ever meet. She understood how they thought, how they fought, how they died. Chief Petty Officer Moon Sejan was the oldest among them at 50. He had served on human ships before the Assembly integration, back when Earth's Navy still built things their own way. He was the only one aboard who had actually worked with kinetic weapons before. The ship is ready, Yoon reported. All primary systems are operational. Weapons are charged. Navigation is plotted. We can launch within the hour. Park looked at his crew through the ship's internal cameras. 200 people filling a vessel designed for 1,000. They were not the best soldiers in Earth's fleet. They were the ones who had been pushed aside, ignored, or removed. They thought differently. They questioned orders. They solved problems using creativity instead of standard procedures. The Assembly called them failures. Park called them human. We launch under cover of a decommissioning flight, Park announced through the ship's speakers. As far as the Assembly knows, this ship is being taken to a recycling facility. Our true destination is the Korath system. 19 days from now, the Valoran Third Armada will arrive there to claim our colony. We will arrive first. The Dokdo lifted from its lunar cradle for the first time in 8 decades. Its engines burned with a blue fire that modern engineers would not recognize. The ship moved not with grace, but with power, pushing through space like a hammer through air. During the journey, the crew trained. Many of them had never used kinetic weapons before. Commander O ran simulation after simulation, teaching officers how to calculate trajectories, how to lead targets, how to think about combat without relying on computer assistance. The Docto systems were designed to support human decisions, not replace them. Lieutenant Yoon gathered the engineering team in the main armory. She stood before a railgun round, a simple tungsten rod 2 meters long. "This is what we fight with," she said. "No plasma, no energy beams. Just metal moving very fast." She ran her hand along the rod's surface. At 3% of light speed, this thing carries more energy than a nuclear bomb. It does not care about shields. It does not care about armor. It hits, and whatever it hits stops existing. An ensign named Kong Jisoo raised her hand. She was 26, a tactical officer who had been removed from her posting for suggesting that human ships should carry backup manual controls. The assembly had called her idea regressive thinking. She stood aboard a ship where every system had manual backups. "What about their point defense systems?" Jisoo asked. "Modern ships can track and destroy incoming projectiles." Yoon smiled. "Modern point defense is designed to stop missiles traveling at a few kilometers per second. Our rounds travel at 9,000 kilometers per second. By the time their sensors detect the shot, the round has already passed through their ship." Chief Moon added, "And if they try to use electronic warfare to blind our targeting, they'll find nothing to hack. Our fire control computers are isolated. No network connections. No wireless signals. We aim the old way, with mathematics and human judgment." Far across the galaxy, Lord Kavros of the Valoran Empire received reports of a single human vessel traveling toward Korath. He sat in his command chamber aboard the flagship Divine Conquest, surrounded by advisors and officers. The Valoran were a proud species, tall and sharp-featured, with skin like polished bronze. They had conquered 30 worlds in the past decade. No one had ever stopped them. "One ship," Kavros said, his voice filled with amusement. "The humans send one ship." His tactical advisor projected information about human vessels. Small, weak, standardized to assembly specifications. Their weapons were energy-based, their shields were thin, and their crews were known for surrendering quickly to avoid casualties. "It is not even a modern vessel," the advisor noted. "Our sensors cannot identify its class. It may be a civilian transport modified for military use. A desperate gesture from a desperate species." Kavros waved his hand dismissively. "Send a single destroyer to intercept it. Crush it quickly. I want the humans to see what happens to those who resist us before we even arrive at their colony." The Valoran destroyer Swift Judgment broke from the main fleet and accelerated toward the approaching human ship. Its captain was young and eager for glory. He would be the one to draw first blood in the conquest of human space. Aboard the Dokdo, alarms sounded as sensors detected the approaching enemy vessel. Captain Park stood at the center of the command deck watching the tactical display. "One destroyer," Commander O reported. "Standard Valoran configuration. 4 plasma cannon batteries. Full shield array, crew of approximately 400. "They're underestimating us, Ensign," Jisoo said. Park nodded slowly. "Yes, they are." He looked at his weapons officer. "Commander O, charge the forward railgun batteries. Wait until they fire first. I want them to believe they have the advantage until the very last second." The two ships closed the distance between them. The Valoran destroyer opened fire at maximum range, its plasma cannons sending brilliant blue bolts across the void. The shots struck the Dokdo's hull. The crew braced for damage reports. Instead, they felt only a slight tremor. The ablative armor absorbed the plasma, dispersing its energy across thousands of small panels designed to melt and reform. "Integrity at 98%, Yoon reported from engineering. "Armor is doing exactly what it was designed to do." Park allowed himself a small smile. "Commander O, return fire." The Dokdo's railguns spoke for the first time. 6 tungsten rounds accelerated down magnetic tracks and crossed the space between the ships in less than a second. The Valoran destroyer's shields, designed to stop energy weapons, did not even slow them down. 3 rounds missed. 3 rounds hit. The destroyer broke apart in silence, its hull torn open from front to back. Atmosphere vented into space. Power systems failed. In the time it took to blink, 400 Valoran crew members died. "Target destroyed," Commander O said quietly. Across the fleet, Lord Kavros received the report. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he did not recognize. It took him a moment to understand what it was: fear. Lord Kavros stared at the tactical display aboard the Divine Conquest. 1 destroyer. 400 warriors. Gone in seconds. The human ship had not even slowed down. It continued on its path toward Korath as if nothing had happened. "What happened?" Kavores demanded. His voice was calm, but his officers knew him well enough to hear the anger beneath it. His tactical advisor replayed the sensor data. The human vessel had absorbed plasma fire without significant damage. Then it had fired something that moved so fast the sensors could barely track it. Physical projectiles. Primitive weapons that no civilized species had used in thousands of years. "They are using kinetic acceleration," the advisor said. "Mass drivers of some kind. Our shields are not designed for this type of attack." Kavros stood from his command throne. "Then we overwhelmed them with numbers. Send 40 ships. Surround the human vessel and destroy it from all angles at once. No amount of primitive metal can survive that." 40 Valoran warships broke formation and moved to intercept the Dokdo. They spread out as they approached, forming a sphere around the human ship's projected path. Standard Valoran doctrine. Superior numbers, coordinated strikes, no escape for the enemy. Aboard the Dokdo, Captain Park watched them come. 40 ships, each one larger than his vessel, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Any sane commander would turn and run. Park had never been particularly sane. Commander O, full weapon status. All railgun batteries charged and ready. 48 nuclear torpedoes armed. Point defense systems online. O paused. "Captain, we don't have enough ammunition for a prolonged engagement. If we fire everything we have, we might destroy 20 of them. The rest will kill us." Park nodded. He had already accepted this possibility. "Then we don't fight to win. We fight to buy time." He opened a channel to engineering. "Lieutenant Yoon, I need maximum speed. Push the engines beyond their rated limits if you have to." "Understood, Captain. I'll give you everything she has." The Dokdo surged forward, not toward Korath, but toward the edge of the system. The Valoran ships adjusted their formation, giving chase. They thought they understood. The human ship was running. They were wrong. Park was leading them away from the planet. Every hour he kept them focused on him was another hour for the colonists to evacuate. Transports were already launching from Korath's surface. Hidden among the chaos, slipping away, while the Valoran fleet was distracted, the first Valoran ships entered weapons range. They opened fire together, coordinated through their networked battle systems. Hundreds of plasma bolts crossed the void, turning space into a wall of blue fire. The Dokdo's armor took the hits. Ablative plates melted and reformed. Whole sections glowed red with heat. But the ship kept moving, kept fighting. "Return fire," Park ordered. "All batteries, independent targeting. Pick your targets and shoot." The railguns fired. Unlike the Valoran coordinated volleys, each gun crew chose their own target, adjusted their own aim, made their own decisions. It was chaotic, unpredictable, and devastating. Tungsten rounds tore through Valoran shields like they were not there. Ships that had never experienced kinetic weapons found their hulls punctured, their systems destroyed, their crews killed. In the first 60 seconds of the engagement, 5 Valoran ships died, but there were still 35 left, and they were learning. The Valoran commanders began spacing their ships farther apart, making it harder for the Dokdo to hit multiple targets. They increased their electronic warfare, trying to jam the human ship's sensors. But the Docto systems were isolated, unconnected to any network. There was nothing to jam. They're launching boarding pods, Ensign Jisoo reported. They're trying to take us intact. Park almost laughed. The Valorans still thought this was a normal battle. They still believed humans would surrender if their situation became hopeless enough. Let them come, Park said. Chief Moon, coordinate internal defense. Commander, keep firing. The battle became a nightmare of fire and metal. The Docto spun and dodged, its engines screaming under Lieutenant Yoon's demands. Railguns fired continuously until their barrels glowed white. Nuclear torpedoes launched in spreads of 4. Overwhelming point defense systems with sheer numbers, Valoran boarding pods latched onto the Docto's hull. Alien soldiers cut through airlocks and poured into the corridors. They expected frightened humans ready to surrender. Instead, they found Chief Moon Saiyajin and his security teams waiting with weapons that the galaxy had banned centuries ago. Shotguns firing solid metal slugs. Grenades filled with shrapnel. Humans fighting with the desperate fury of people who had nothing left to lose. The corridors of the Dokdo became a slaughterhouse. Valoran soldiers, trained in energy weapon combat, found themselves facing an enemy that fought at close range with physical force. Humans tackled them, stabbed them, beat them with bare hands when weapons failed. Dr. Shin Young-ji turned the medical bay into a fortress, saving wounded crew members while fighting off boarders with a pistol she had not fired in 20 years. When a Valoran soldier broke through her defenses, she killed him with a surgical laser designed for precise cuts, not combat. On the command deck, Captain Park felt the ship shudder as another plasma volley struck. Damage reports flooded in. 35 crew members dead. Hull breaches on for decks. 1 railgun battery destroyed. The Docto was dying slowly, but it refused to fall.
How many
Enemy ships remaining? Park asked. 17 destroyed, 6 disabled, Commander O reported. His voice was hoarse from shouting orders. We've lost 40% of our ammunition, 17 Valoran warships killed by a single human vessel. It was impossible. It was unprecedented. And across the fleet, Lord Cavros watched it happen with growing horror. This ship was not supposed to exist. Human technology was primitive, weak. Their integration into the assembly had stripped them of their ability to wage real war, or so everyone believed. But this vessel was from before. From the time when humans built weapons based on fear, when they designed ships to survive extinction-level threats. This was not war as the galaxy understood it. This was something older, darker, more terrible.
Oh.
Ships withdraw, Cavros ordered. His voice cut through the battle network. Fall back to the main fleet. We regroup and return with full force. The surviving Valoran ships broke off their attack. They fled toward the main Armada, leaving their dead behind. On the Dokdo's bridge, Park watched them go. His ship was crippled, venting atmosphere from a dozen wounds. 35 of his people were dead. Many more were wounded. But behind them, the last civilian transports were jumping to safety. 50,000 colonists would live. They'll be back, Commander O said quietly. With everything they have, Park nodded. He looked at the damage reports, at the casualty lists, at the exhausted faces of his crew. They had won an impossible victory, but the real battle was still coming. Then we need to get home, Park said. Earth needs to know what's coming, and humanity needs to remember what we're capable of. The Dokdo limped toward Earth, carrying its wounded, its dead, and a warning that would change the galaxy forever. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. A single human ship had destroyed 23 Valoran warships and forced the remainder to retreat. Video footage leaked from unknown sources, showing the battle in terrible detail. Tungsten rounds tearing through shields, ships breaking apart in silence, the mighty Valoran Empire running from a vessel that should not exist. On the Galactic Assembly Station, Ambassador Choi Murray sat in her office and watched her communication console light up with incoming messages. Species that had ignored humanity for decades suddenly wanted to talk. Some offered support. Many demanded explanations. Others issued threats. The assembly convened an emergency session. 200 species, sent their representatives to the Great Council Chamber, a vast dome floating in neutral space. Ambassador Choi took her place at humanity's small desk in the back corner, the seat they had occupied since joining a century ago. The Valoran ambassador spoke first. His words were sharp with anger. Humanity has violated galactic law. They deployed weapons banned under the Treaty of Civilized Warfare. They used kinetic acceleration systems, nuclear devices, physical projectiles against Valoran vessels engaged in lawful territorial expansion. Choi listened without expression. She had heard these arguments before. Whenever humans did anything the Assembly disliked, they were reminded of the rules. But the rules never seemed to apply when others did things to humans. We demand immediate sanctions against Earth, the Valoran continued. We demand the surrender of the vessel responsible for this attack. We demand that humanity be stripped of Assembly membership and declared a rogue civilization. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many species had always been uncomfortable with humanity. Too aggressive, too unpredictable, too willing to fight when fighting seemed pointless. This was their chance to put humans in their place forever. Ambassador Choi stood. The chamber fell silent. Humans rarely spoke in assembly sessions. They had learned long ago that their words carried no weight here. You prohibited our weapons, Choi said. Her voice was quiet, but clear. You told us that kinetic weapons were barbaric, and nuclear devices were unacceptable, that only energy-based armaments were civilized enough for galactic society. We agreed. We dismantled our arsenals. We rebuilt our fleet to your specifications. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes that had looked down on her for 20 years. But you did not prohibit their weapons when they came to slaughter our children. You did not intervene when the Valoran Empire announced its intention to conquer our colonies. You told us to file complaints? You told us to wait for the next council session. You told us that the proper procedures would be followed. Choi's voice grew harder. 50,000 human lives meant nothing to you. We were not worth saving. So we saved ourselves. And now you are angry because we did not die quietly. The chamber erupted in shouting. Species argued with each other, with humanity, with the principles they claimed to hold. But Ambassador Choi had said what needed to be said. She sat down and waited for the storm to pass. Across human space, a different kind of storm was building. The Valoran Empire had announced its response to the humiliation at Korath. 1,200 warships, the largest armada assembled in a century, would enter human space within 30 days. Their demands were simple. Unconditional surrender, or Earth and all its colonies would burn. Fleet Admiral Gohin Woo stood in Earth Defense Command, staring at tactical projections that showed certain death. Humanity's official fleet consisted of 42 combat vessels, all built to assembly specifications, all designed to fight alongside alien allies who would not come to help. Against 1,200 Valoran warships, they would last perhaps an hour. The Docto limped into Earth's orbit, more wreckage than ship. Captain Park Do-yeon was carried off on a stretcher, his body broken, but his mind still sharp. Admiral Baek Sun-ho met him in the medical bay. There are no other ships like the Dokdo, Park said through the pain. I asked. I hoped. But she was the only one that survived. Baek nodded. He had known this truth for years. Then we need to build more. We need to remember how our ancestors thought, how they fought. There's no time. 30 days is not enough to build a fleet. Commander O Taiwan entered the room. His face was tired, but his eyes were bright with an idea that had kept him awake through the entire journey home. We don't need to build new ships, O said. We need to change the ones we have. Every ship in human space, every freighter, every transport, every mining vessel, give them weapons. Give them the designs from the Dokdo. Let every human who can hold a wrench turn their ship into a weapon. It was insane. It was desperate. It was exactly the kind of thinking that the Assembly had tried to train out of humanity for 100 years. Admiral Baek made the decision in seconds. Do it. Broadcast the specifications for kinetic weapons, for analog targeting systems, for everything the Dokdo carried. Send it to every shipyard, every engineering school, every garage mechanic who ever dreamed of building something with their hands. Within hours, The most classified military technology in human history became public knowledge. Engineers across human space downloaded specifications and began working. Shipyards that had been building civilian transports started welding railgun mounts to their hulls. Miners who had spent their lives operating cargo haulers learned how to aim weapons designed for war. Lieutenant Yoon Hanna, promoted to chief engineer of Earth's emergency defense program, coordinated the chaos. She worked 20-hour days answering questions from thousands of amateur engineers trying to turn their ships into weapons. Most of what they built was crude, barely functional. But it was human, and it would fight. Ensign Jisoo, now leading the Dokdo's tactical department while it underwent emergency repairs, trained new crews in combat techniques that no academy had taught in generations. How to fight without computer assistance. How to make decisions without waiting for orders. How to think like a predator instead of prey. Dr. Shin Young-ji worked in hospitals across Earth, treating refugees from the outer colonies and preparing medical teams for the battle to come. She knew the casualty numbers would be terrible. She also knew that humans had never been stopped by terrible numbers before. Chief Moon Saijin, recovering from wounds taken during the boarding action, recorded training videos for the security teams being assembled on every vessel. His lessons were simple and brutal. How to fight in corridors. How to kill with anything available. How to keep fighting when fighting seemed hopeless, and in his hospital bed. Captain Park Do-yeon refused surgery that would have kept him sedated during the battle. He would be on the bridge of the Dokdo when the Valoran came. He had promised his crew he would see this through, and he intended to keep that promise. 30 days passed like 30 hours. On the morning of the battle, humanity looked at what it had built. 40 military vessels, all retrofitted with kinetic weapons and analog systems. 300 civilian ships, armed with everything from proper railguns to simple cargo holds, filled with tungsten rods to be dumped in the enemy's path. It was not an army. It was not even a fleet by any proper definition. It was 340 ships crewed by farmers, miners, engineers, and soldiers who had been told they were obsolete. Against them came 1,200 Valoran warships. The pride of an empire that had never lost a war. The galaxy held its breath, and humanity remembered what it meant to fight. The Valoran Armada dropped out of hyperspace near Jupiter, their ships filling the void like a metal plague. 1,200 vessels arranged in perfect formation, their weapons charged, their crews confident. Lord Kavaros stood on the bridge of the Divine Conquest and looked at what awaited them. 40 human warships floated in a defensive line. Behind them, 300 smaller vessels of wildly different configurations. Freighters with railguns welded to their hulls. Mining ships with their industrial lasers reconfigured for combat. Passenger liners with torpedo tubes mounted where observation decks used to be. A garbage fleet defending a garbage species? Kavaros laughed. This is their answer? This collection of scrap metal. He opened a communication channel to the human fleet. Surrender now, and we will grant quick deaths. Resist, and we will burn your world slowly. Your colonies will become slave camps. Your children will serve Valoran masters. This is your only chance. Aboard the Dokdo, Captain Park Do-yeon listened to the message from his command chair. He was not fully healed. Medical equipment was attached to his body, keeping him functional through chemistry and technology. It did not matter. He would fall when the battle was over, not before. Respond? Commander O asked. Park shook his head. Words were meaningless now. Only actions mattered. All ships, Park broadcast to the human fleet. You know what's at stake? Fight your own fight. Trust your judgment. And remember that they cannot break us unless we let them. The battle began. The Valoran fleet advanced in their standard formation, coordinated through networked battle computers that linked every ship together. They had fought 100 species this way. Superior numbers, coordinated fire, overwhelming force. It had never failed. It failed today. The human fleet did not fight as a fleet. Each ship fought as an individual, its captain making decisions without waiting for orders, its crew adapting to the chaos moment by moment. The Valoran found themselves fighting not one enemy, but 340 separate battles simultaneously. Mining ships drove directly into Valoran formations and dumped their cargo holds. Thousands of tungsten rods scattered through space at high velocity, turning the void into a field of deadly metal. Valoran ships that tried to maneuver found their hulls punctured by debris. Freighters with railguns fired from unexpected angles, their civilian configurations confusing Valoran targeting systems. Passenger liners launched torpedo spreads and then retreated, drawing pursuit away from the main engagement. And at the center of the chaos, the Docto led the military vessels in a spearhead aimed at the heart of the enemy fleet. Lieutenant Yoon Hana pushed the engines beyond every safety limit. The ship vibrated with power that threatened to tear it apart. "We have maybe 1 hour before something critical fails," she reported to the bridge. "That's enough," Park replied. He pointed at the tactical display at the Divine Conquest surrounded by its guard ships. "Get me to Kavros." The Docto carved through the Valoran formation like a blade. Its railguns fired continuously, tearing apart any ship that got in its way. Its armor patched and repaired but still holding. Absorbed plasma fire that would have destroyed lesser vessels. Valoran ships fell by the dozen. But so did human ships. A freighter named Busan Spirit was cut in half by concentrated plasma fire, its crew of 40 dying in seconds. A former luxury liner called Eternal Hope rammed a Valoran cruiser, destroying both vessels. Miners and farmers and engineers died in the vacuum, fighting for a world they loved. Chief Moon Seijin stood in the Docto's engine room, watching power systems fail one by one. The ship was dying around him. He knew what had to be done. "Lieutenant Yoon, get to the bridge," Moon said. "I'll keep the engines running. Chief, if you stay here, you won't survive." Moon smiled, the expression of a man who had made peace with his death. "I'm 50 years old. I've watched humanity bow to aliens my whole life. Today, I get to see us stand up." He placed his hands on the emergency override controls. "Tell them we didn't forget how to fight." Yoon left the engine room. Behind her, Moon began manually stabilizing systems that automation could no longer control. The Docto kept moving. Lord Kavaros watched his fleet crumble. This was impossible. Humans were weak, primitive, broken. They could not do this. They could not be doing this. "All ships concentrate fire on the lead vessel," he ordered. "Destroy it at any cost." Hundreds of Valoran weapons turned toward the Docto. Plasma fire filled the space around it, so dense that the ship became invisible behind walls of blue energy. For a moment, it seemed like nothing could survive such an assault. Then the Docto emerged from the fire, burning but still moving. Its armor was nearly gone. Its weapons were failing, but its engines pushed forward with the last of their strength. Captain Park stood on a bridge filled with smoke and sparks. Half his officers were dead. The rest were wounded. He looked at the Divine Conquest, now close enough to see with naked eyes. Ramming speed, he ordered. Commander O looked at him. There was no fear in his eyes, only understanding. "It's been an honor, Captain." "The honor was mine." The Docto accelerated one final time, aiming directly at the Valoran flagship. Kavora screamed orders to his crew, demanding they stop the human vessel, kill its captain, destroy it before it reached them. It was too late. The Docto struck the Divine Conquest at full speed. A kilometer of human engineering crashed into the heart of the Valoran command ship. Both vessels died together in an explosion that lit up the void for 1,000,000 kilometers. Lord Kavros, Supreme Commander of the Valoran Third Armada, died in the flames. Captain Park Do-yeon, Chief Moon Seijin, and 83 crew members died with him. The Valoran fleet lost its coordination. Without Kavros, without their networked command structure, they became a collection of individual ships facing an enemy that had fought that way from the start, the surviving human vessels. Now only 19 military ships and 87 civilians pressed the attack. They pursued retreating Valoran ships to the edge of the system and beyond. They showed no mercy because they had been shown none. When it was over, the Valoran Empire had lost 800 warships. Their military supremacy, built over centuries of conquest, was broken in a single day. 6 months later, the Galactic Assembly formally recognized humanity as a Tier 1 military civilization, a status usually reserved for species with thousands of years of spacefaring history. Nobody objected. Nobody dared. Earth began construction on a new class of warships. They were called the Dokdo class, and they carried weapons that made the original prototype look gentle. The first ship off the production line was named the S by Do, and its captain was Yoon Hana. Ambassador Choi Murray returned to the assembly chamber for the recognition ceremony. She looked at the species that had ignored humanity, dismissed humanity, nearly allowed humanity to be exterminated. "We came to you peaceful," she said. "We came to you open. We joined your assembly and followed your rules and trusted your protection. You taught us that the galaxy respects only strength. So we remember now. We remember what we are capable of. We remember what our ancestors knew." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "We remember that humanity does not die quietly." On Earth's moon, a memorial stood where the old shipyard used to be. 847 names were carved into black stone, the humans who died in the Battle of Seoul. At the center stood a statue of the Dokdo. Captured in the moment before its final charge, an inscription was carved at its base, taken from Captain Park's final log entry. Recorded seconds before impact, "We built this ship because we were afraid. We flew it because we had hope. We died in it because some things are worth more than survival." Earth remembers. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Humanity was small. Humanity was young. Humanity had been conquered by fear and broken by diplomacy, and forced to hide its true nature behind a mask of civilization. But push them far enough, threaten their children, burn their homes, and they would show you exactly what that fear had built. They would show you the weapons. They would show you the fury. They would show you why their ancestors had looked at the stars and built ships designed not to explore, not to trade, not to make friends. Ships designed to make sure that nothing in the universe could ever extinguish them. Earth remembered, and the galaxy would never forget.